with privacy regulations and the ad space hunkering down, what forms of digital advertising supplements that gap in data that we're less likely to receive over time?
Yeah, so we're on the topic of the week now.
Yeah, let's move on. So I do have 3 points written down of that. I think partnerships will be very big. People leaning in on influencer campaigns will be very big. And of course, email marketing, they can come back. It's always been there. It's kind of a silent killer, but I feel like when we're working with clients, are we really focusing on email marketing, or is it more so, again, those attribution types of kind of brand awareness plugs, if you will? There's a lot that we focus on in that side of the pipeline, but the loyalty and the nurturing campaigns will definitely be more leveraged, I think, moving forward. But your thoughts?
Yeah, I think I do agree that like partnerships and collaborations are going to continue to be important. Influencers, I know is sort of a dirty word in this space because I think rightly a lot of them have gotten a bad name, but I also blame brands for that because they're not deciding to actually invite in actual relationships and partnerships with their influencers. They're just handing them, a box of free product and going on their merry way. Good influencer campaigns, I think, are going to be a useful workaround, as is email marketing and SMS, which frankly, I think is the bigger tie-in here. First-party data is always the most valuable data, and the privacy regulations do not prevent brands from collecting effective first-party data, which is essentially just another way of saying, if you have something good to sell, if you have a good story to share, and you give users an honest, quality experience, people still want to give away their information. I mean, I know I'm a marketer, and I'm probably the most sensitive to being retargeted by someone who's annoying me or getting unquestioned emails repeatedly. But I do sign up for brands that I really like and care about their products and services. And the brands who continue to do that and not try to pull a fast one and use people's data responsibly are not really going to lose out significantly. Yes, they're going to miss on some of the click obsession that they have with attribution, which I know we're going to talk about here in a second. But I do think, generally speaking, the forms of digital advertising that supplements the gap, we talked about a few, but I don't think there's any change in the channels that are still going to work. And I'm going to generalize here, but people go to Google to find things either by, that they know by name or by idea, right? So if I'm looking for a blue bicycle, I'll go to Amazon and I'll try to find a blue bicycle. So that behavior is not going to change because the data tracking is different. So the channels are still correct. It's just the advertisers can't be so reliant on third-party data because it's cheap and it's lazy, and users, frankly, don't want that sort of collection of their data. They want to opt in of their own free will, but only with brands that they actually trust to give them good experiences for it in exchange.
For sure. So going into attribution in that debate, since something very hot within our agency.
Yeah.
Do companies need to stop obsessing over data, especially with these changes coming about in the market? Should they work on building their brand or focusing more on brand awareness campaign objectives or anything with these upcoming changes?
Yeah, this obsession with attribution has become like a bane of our existence as agency workers. And I don't mean that at the denigration of anybody, right? I was somebody who, even a few years ago in my career, thought that was one of the real values of targeted social advertising, targeted digital advertising. TV, for example, you could run a spot and you never knew who necessarily responded and reacted because of the ad, whereas digital and social, that wasn't unique, right? It's like, well, yeah, I can tell you exactly who clicked on it. Well, guess what? 90% or more of people who respond or react to an ad never clicked on the ad. So that's one of the first, major gaps in attribution. And it also, I guess, emboldens you to make short-sighted decisions, that if you're only relying on the things that you can click and track, then you're completely ignorant to the other things that are very, very valuable to the purchase decision process that you're ignoring. And, you and I, for example, I'll use the microphones that we're unfortunately not able to use on our first episode, right? We purchased, there we go. Thank you. Good product placement for our friends at Blue. They made these nice microphones that we'll figure out how to use eventually. But we bought 3 of those to the tune of close to $400, right? Mm-hmm. How did we come across those? It had nothing to do with the fact that we looked for them by name on Amazon. It had everything to do with the fact that we looked through some peer-reviewed articles and they said, this is one of the best, microphones for podcasting, and there is no attribution, in this blog that connected to Amazon. It wasn't like they had an affiliate program set up or anything like that. So if I'm an advertiser for Blue microphones, I'm saying, oh, wow, someone typed in Blue microphone by name. We must be doing a really great job at SEO. Well, no.
Really? Yeah.
What we found is that other people are talking about you and saying credible things. 100%. So, and again, that's just one example, but generally speaking, I think this obsession with attribution is making a lot of advertisers really blind to the things that they used to really care about that were important. And you started with them. A good brand story, like a product that really solves a problem, and the ability to speak the language that your customer speaks by telling them about how it works. And no, amount of optimization is going to make that, any better. Like, oh, well, I optimized for purchase instead of click, so this is a better campaign. Like, yeah, okay. You might get a little bit of credit for some of those things, but at the end of the day, that's not how users shop, and they don't care about your data. They care about getting good products and good experiences from brands that pay attention.
I agree. So last on that note, to close out our topic of the week, reporting. How much is too much, and what are the absolute need to know metrics universal to all businesses, knowing everything that you just divulged in with attribution?
Yeah, that's a good question. Especially with the questions that are going on with attribution right now, I think what's going to happen is that there's going to be, at least in the short term, maybe a consolidated level of reporting for some people. Let's use Facebook as an example. We've already seen this. They had a 28-day attribution window. Now it's 7. And we also know, we can't see it yet because the iOS14 update just rolled out in its full depth of what it's going to be. But there's probably going to be additional limitations of data that are getting tracked there as well. So, I think speaking through the lens of the type of business that we are, the type of agency that we are, we're dealing with e-commerce clients. And generally speaking, I think there's a handful of metrics that are critical. In fact, this is not to sell ourselves, but we're working on a uniform type of report for all of our clients that is going to help them do exactly that. So I think impressions at a very basic level are important, as well as reach. You always want to be looking at the messaging frequency of how often your message is getting in front of the right customers, and that's a good indicator, right?
Right.
For clicks for a second, yes, we'll look at those. I think they're useful, but understanding how often the cash register starts to move after a person has seen your ad enough times is a really important indicator. So I would say that. I would also say that you certainly want to look at revenue and cost per purchase, obviously for e-com brands, and finding a way to increase one while dropping the other. More revenue, less cost per purchase, less cost per acquisition. And I would say you also want to continue to look at, and granted, I just poo-pooed on all of the attribution metrics that people are in love with, but I wouldn't, live and die by them. So the example that I'm about to give is click-through rate, right? It's not the end-all be-all, but it's a very important indicator if people find your content relevant or appropriate or engaging, looking at, view-through times on videos and things like that. So I'd say click-through rate is still relevant. And then lifetime value. That's a really important one that doesn't have anything to do with quote unquote digital attribution, and a lot more to do with creating a user experience where the brand stays in touch and keeps listening to their customers, and then offers them opportunities to buy more of the things that they do like, or try some of the things that are potentially good add-ons to the things they've already bought. And I think lifetime value is the ultimate measure, right? Mm-hmm. If you can get someone to buy from you once, fantastic. If you can get someone to buy from you 4 or 5 times a year, now you have a business that's sustainable, and you don't have to necessarily spend all that money on acquiring that customer. So I would say lifetime value is probably the most important metric for most e-com businesses. And if you ask me on a different day, I might have a different answer on this. But for today, I would say that I think those are your need to knows.